Hi, welcome back to our channel. We regularly upload interesting videos on different stories. Please like and subscribe if you enjoy it. Today I'm going to discuss a drama, mystery, and thriller movie called Secret Obsession. Be aware that the video contains spoilers. On a rainy night, a woman flees down the street from an unknown pursuer. She tries to call a number using a phone booth but gets no answer. Then she runs inside a public toilet to hide from an unknown man as he enters. She manages to escape from the bathroom. She tries to get into her car, but the car is locked. She smashes the window with a rock and enters the vehicle. The vehicle is attached to the pursuer's car, so she can't move with it. The woman exits the vehicle and runs to the road, where a man hits her. Several other people got there to help. The woman is unconscious and not responding, so they call 911. The woman wakes up on a hospital bed. She is having flashbacks of her husband and their wedding day. The flashbacks quickly switched to the night and she got hit by a car. A man enters the hospital and introduces himself to a nurse as Russell Williams. Russell asks for his wife, whose name is Jennifer. The nurse tells him that Jennifer is in the OT and he can't go in there. Now Russell goes anyway and sees Jennifer being revived. As Russell waits, he stops the nurse and asks if Jennifer remembers anything. The nurse tells him that Jen had a lot of internal bleeding on her brain and that it's possible she won't remember anything. Russell falls asleep in the waiting room in the morning. The nurse wakes him up, telling him Jennifer is out of surgery. But she hasn't regained consciousness yet. The nurse takes Russell up to Jennifer. Russell reassures Jennifer. He isn't going to leave her and says that he will wait as long as she needs in the hospital. A detective called Frank Page is buying gifts for his daughter's birthday. When he gets a call to attend the crime scene, he drives to the road where Jennifer got hit and decides to go to the hospital to talk to Russell, her husband. Frank asks Russell when the last time he saw Jennifer was. Russell answers that that night, Jennifer left to get groceries. Russell says that he tried to call Jennifer an hour later, but she didn't respond. Then he called the store, but the owner said he hadn't seen her. Frank then asks if they had problems with each other, but Russell tells Frank they just got married and there were no problems. Frank also tells Russell that the car she left with is missing and there have been no reports about it so far. Frank drives home and wraps the gifts for his daughter, but as soon as he finishes, he starts crying. We see a closet full of unopened gifts, and the voice coming from the TV tells us that a 10-year-old girl named Hannah Page went missing. Jennifer finally wakes up so Russell can see her. The doctor tells Russell that Jennifer has severe brain damage and won't be able to recall episodic memories. She will still remember things like her childhood and name, but she won't be able to recall them. Russell, the doctor, promises they're going to get there eventually, but it takes a long time. Jennifer tells Russell she doesn't remember anything about the night she got hit. Russell tells her that he is going to be there for her and go through everything with her. Frank questions. The man who hit Jennifer asks if he saw anybody else there. He answers no, but he tells Frank he saw a white pickup pulling another car. Frank tells his boss that someone dropped her off there or took her car. Either way, someone else was there before we switched back to the hospital. We see a man sit down at Frank's table and is called and quote, Jim Kahn and quote, Russell shows pictures and tells stories about their life with Jennifer. They're having a good time and Jennifer asks if he's talked to her parents already. Russell tells her that her parents passed away a few years ago in a house fire. Russell thought she remembered, but she forgot that as well. Jim Kahn comes to the hospital and asks about Jennifer. They won't let him see her, as only close relatives are allowed to visit. Kahn leaves flowers for her, and as he walks away, we see Russell looking at him through a door. Jennifer gets better and better every day, to the point where she can eat normally and use the wheelchair confidently. The nurse tells Jennifer she's showing improvement in every way, including her memories. Russell takes Jennifer to a beautiful big house, which he says is their house. As Jennifer is looking at the fireplace, she gets a flashback about the pursuer being there with a knife. Russell asks what's wrong, but she doesn't answer. Jennifer tells Russell how quiet the place is, and Russell tells her it is because the nearest neighbor is a mile away. Russell is preparing food when Detective Frank calls him. Russell heads outside to talk it in. Jennifer goes to the balcony as well. Listening to the conversation, Frank tells him they haven't found Jennifer's car yet, but one of the witnesses, Jim Kahn, saw the white pickup truck's license plate. Frank asks Russell to bring Jennifer to the police station to let Frank talk to her. Russell tries to deny the request, but agrees to take her to the station. The next day, Jennifer asks what is going to happen the next day, and Russell lies to her that he needs to go to work. Jennifer asks if the workplace is okay with her taking time off, but Russell tells her she quit her job before the wedding because they decided to start a family. Jennifer realizes she has no family and no job left, so she asks Russell about her friends. Russell tells her that they don't meet up as much as they used to, but they were asking about her when she was in the hospital. Russell reaches for Jennifer's hand. She holds Russell's hand, but she seems uncomfortable. Jennifer then asks Russell if they are happy or not together. Russell tells her they are still there. Con arrives home when Russell appears in a rearview mirror. Russell asks why he was asking about Jennifer in the hospital, but Con refuses to answer. Con asks who he is, and Russell tells him he is Jennifer's husband. Russell takes a crowbar and hits Con. Russell then breaks Con's neck and takes his body to his house. Jennifer wakes up and sees Russell digging in the backyard in the morning. Jennifer sees the pile of dirt in the backyard and she can't take her eyes off of it. Frank calls back Russell, as he didn't show up with Jennifer. Russell isn't responding, so Frank asks his colleague to trace his number. Frank drives to the hospital and asks the nurse for his address. Since he isn't in the police database, the nurse gives them the address Russell gave them and asks Frank to tell Russell to call the hospital back for appointments since they can't reach his phone either. Jennifer is looking at their pictures and she notices that in one of the pictures, Russell's hair looks different in the mirror. She decides to go down the stairs even though she isn't strong enough to walk on her own. She manages to get down, but she is in great pain. She takes a look at their wedding photo, and she finally notices that someone chose the cheapest option available on Fiverr for Photoshop. She then tries to look for clues and access Russell's computer. Russell comes home, and she quickly closes the laptop. Russell gives her a phone, which is in a gift box for whatever reason. The phone has no signal since they live in the mountains. Frank goes to the address that he got from the hospital, and the old lady opens the door and tells Frank she's never heard that name before and that she doesn't know anyone named Russell or Jennifer. Frank calls the department, and they tell him they can't trace the phone. Despite all the red flags, Jennifer decides to give a little cute kiss to Russell. Jennifer only backs away when she has another flashback from the night she was attacked. Russell psychs out and tells Jennifer that he deserves a night with his wife. After all, he went through with her. He eventually lets her go and asks for forgiveness, but Jennifer turns around and ignores him. Russell gets up and heads to his computer, and we see that a hidden camera is installed in their bedroom. Frank is still trying to figure out who was at the scene with a white pickup truck. Frank calls the hospital and asks the nurse to get the security footage. Frank also asks how Russell proved he was Jennifer's husband. The nurse tells him he showed the photos and identified her back tattoo. Frank checks the security footage and sees Russell getting out of a white pickup truck on the night of the accident. The next morning, Russell apologizes to Jennifer for having flowers. Frank goes to a tattoo salon and asks the man with the tattoo on Jennifer's back what it means. The artist tells Frank it stands for the name Allen. Frank runs a search for the name Jennifer Allen and finds an address in San Jose. When Frank gets to the house, he sees that the mailbox is full and the door is open. He enters the house and tries to switch on the lights, but there is no electricity. He sees food rotting on the table as he keeps looking for someone. As Frank enters one of the bedrooms, upstairs, he finds Jennifer's parents' corpses. As Jennifer wakes up, she hides Russell's wallet and asks him to go and grab groceries for her. Russell locks the door as he leaves. When Russell finally leaves, Jennifer finds her driving license in the wallet and sees that her name is Jennifer Allen. She grabs a hairpin and shames the lockpicking lawyer. She manages to open the door with only one hand and one hairpin. Frank heads to Jennifer and Russell's previous workplace, where one of the employees tells him they left the company before the wedding. Meanwhile, Jennifer guesses the password for Russell's computer and finds the unedited photos of her and her real husband. The employee shows a picture of Jennifer and the real Russell to Frank. Frank spots the man who took Jennifer from the hospital and asks who he is. The employee tells Frank that the man is Ryan Garrity. Ryan Garrity left the company a few months ago after breaking the nose of his employer. The employee gives the contact info to Frank in a note that the real Russell wrote to Jennifer before they left. Jennifer isn't the sharpest tool in the shed, but she finally remembers the events and recognizes her attacker. Ryan, on the other hand, Jennifer tries to access the internet, but the cables are cut. Ryan realizes he left his wallet at home and heads back. Jennifer takes her jacket and heads outside to look for a signal. She takes off the back of her phone and sees that the battery has melted. We learn that Ryan isn't really good at hiding things as Jennifer heads to the garden and stumbles on a hand sticking out of the ground. Ryan comes and hits her on the head with a rock and carries her upstairs. Jennifer wakes up and still doesn't understand what's happening and asks Ryan about the internet on her phone. I think she might have lost a chromosome on the way to the hospital. Ryan gives her medicine, which she takes without much resistance. Jennifer asks Ryan who he is and what he did to her husband. Ryan chains her to the bed and leaves as Ryan is buying tools. He meets the nurse. The nurse tells Ryan about the detective and Ryan speeds off. Jennifer wakes up and takes off the chains. She takes a hairpin and battles her biggest enemy, the stairs. She manages to get the upper hand and heads to the kitchen to wrap her leg in duct tape. She finds her old phone in her car in the garage. The phone is still charged and turned on. After several weeks, Ryan enters the garage and Jennifer hides in the back. Ryan opens the trunk where we see the real Russell's body. Jennifer heads back upstairs and lies in bed. When the doorbell rings, Ryan is about to discover that Jennifer isn't chained to the bed anymore. Frank is at the gate, and Ryan opens it for him. Jennifer gets down and sees Frank on the other side of the window. Jennifer asks for help from Frank. Frank, instead of asking for backup, goes to the back door where Ryan hits him on the head. Ryan takes Jennifer back upstairs and locks the door on her. He also locks up Detective Frank in the freezer. Jennifer heads out to look for a signal, but she forgets her life is in danger and watches his videos on her phone instead. Ryan comes back and ties her up. Jennifer tells Ryan she wants to live, and Ryan starts telling her the story of how he met her. Ryan was basically stalking Jennifer for years and became obsessed with her. He tells her that he killed her. Jennifer's parents and husband Ryan planned to kill her as well, but she lost her memories and he saw it as a chance. Ryan leaves the room and Frank wakes up in the freezer. Ryan's car takes Frank's car inside the garage. Ryan goes back to Jen. Jen pretends to understand Ryan and asks him to get her something to drink. Jennifer grabs a lighter from the ground and burns the rope. By the time Ryan gets back, she isn't in her bed. She hits Ryan from behind with a vase, takes his keys and locks him in the room. Jennifer goes one-on-one with the stairs, but she loses while Ryan tries to break the door. Ryan finally breaks the door, and Frank also manages to escape from the freezer. Despite taking Ryan's keys, Jennifer chooses to walk rather than drive because she believes in living an emission-free lifestyle. Jennifer is still looking for a signal in the woods as Ryan chases. After her, Frank is also in the woods. Jen decides to go full Scooby-Doo and throws a rock to distract Ryan. She manages to hit him on the back with a branch, but Ryan quickly knocks her to the ground. Ryan is about to shoot Jen when Frank appears out of nowhere and takes Ryan to the ground. Jen takes the gun and shoots Ryan twice. Ryan collapses, and Jen runs to hug Frank. 3 months later, Frank is packing up his stuff. When Jen visits him, Frank gives the letter he found earlier to Jen. In the letter, the real Russell expresses his love for Jen. Jen drives away with a smile on her face, like the murder of her loved ones and the kidnapping never happened. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this recap, please consider subscribing.